All right, guys, so I have rotoed the parts that need to be rotoed on this shot, except for this kind of rope sort of belt thing that he's kind of swinging around here. So if I hit play on this, we can see the roto that I've done. And obviously this will take you quite some time. Otherwise, you can just pick up the mat that I've created here. And I will save this in a roto note so you can just use it if you're not looking to roto the entire shot. Or the parts that are necessary for this shot. Although I would recommend, of course, if you're learning, which probably most of you are, at least do a couple parts of the roto, just to get the experience down and make sure you understand it, because roto actually is a skill. It's not something that you just are instantly good at. It does take a little bit of technique and practice. Although it's not that complicated, in my opinion, it's something sort of you can learn pretty quickly. So I've kind of split up my rotos into small shapes like I was telling you guys about. So if I zoom in, for example, to this edge, if you hit M while you have the node selected here, and if you're pointing over the viewer, you can see the mat sort of overlaid onto our image. Just helps us see what's covered. So I've basically gone with small shapes and just traced different areas. Again, it's always easier to do it in small shapes than to try to do it all in one shape, because more often than not, if you do it all in one shape, your points will start to be sliding around and it'll give you a worse mat. So the more you can break a large shape into small ones is going to be beneficial. And so I kind of break it up into how the object is shaped and stuff like that. So it's easier to rotate the pieces and everything if it's sort of like that. And also the relative volume, let's say, of the shape that you're tracing is not going to change. So, you can just take all these points and rotate them versus like taking a whole bunch of points and trying to move them all one by one, which sometimes obviously you need to adjust the points, but that's just something to think about. Now, you can see I've also rotoed just the pieces that are kind of covering the rail and not so much over the white screen we have here. And we can probably get most of this with a key, so we're not going to bother rotoing every piece, basically. So if I gain down a little bit, we can see it's a pretty flat white screens, and he's a very dark character and a dark coat that he's wearing here. So it's a very easy contrast to key. So we're not going to have to worry too much about that. And one thing with the roto, always roto a little bit past the area that you need, because essentially what we're going to have to do is take keys. So maybe we'll key this area, for example, and we'll need to blend it down with the roto. And if you don't roto a little bit past the area that we can't key, you're going to get problem areas, basically. And this is something that's very annoying in production, actually. Sometimes when you outsource roto to a third-party vendor, sometimes the roto artists don't know this, and they'll basically roto like just to the edge of where they're told to roto, and they won't give you that extra coverage, which is kind of just going a little bit beyond, so you can blend the area that's a key and blend the area that's a roto. So always roto a little bit past. It's going to save you problems. Like, for example, we could easily probably key this area, but just for time savings, I actually roto just a little bit extra, knowing that I'm going to have to blend these two things. So if I kind of scrub through, you'll see that that's how I pretty much approach it. Always giving more pixels on the edge. Not worrying about the areas that aren't necessary to roto. And you can see at one point we have like a whole bunch of shapes here. And also, for example, like this is easy to key up here and it's pretty far away. But I did just take the shape that I had created and just animate it to match position anyway. And the reason I did that is because if we only roto the one frame that it's in front of the piece that we can't key, like this frame, essentially the motion blur is not going to match the footage. So you need to animate it and match a few frames past the area even where you'll need it. Otherwise, like I said, the motion blur, where it's calculated. So for example, if we press this button, it's enabling that motion blur, but that's based on the frames around. So if we're on frame 39, wherever the position is on frame 40 or 38, it's comparing and making that motion blur. And if we gain down a little bit, we might even have to adjust this later on in our mat. So when we get into the detailed key and everything, we might need to go in and specifically adjust the feather of certain frames to try to capture some more of that motion blur. Alternatively, we'll be able to pull these points out and try to maintain as much of that motion blur as we can. But I'm not going to do that quite yet. I'm going to do it more when we get into the full key to see what we actually need versus kind of wasting time doing that now. So yeah, that's all things to consider. The next thing I'm going to do in the next video is just start to roto the difficult areas, which is, I guess it's pretty much the same as what we did, but some of this thing is like blurring so much that the object almost disappears. So you can see, like, for example, here we're seeing like the pillar or whatever is behind, but actually this rope isn't splitting in half. It's just there's so much motion blur that you basically don't even see the object anymore. So that's kind of tricky, although it's pretty much the same as we're doing anyway. So we might not get like a perfect roto mat of that. And we might have to do some specific frame by frame, maybe painting alpha or something to get something really specific. Alternatively, we could do a frame by frame roto, kind of like, for example, we could just roto this one frame here, and then we could just feather it to match versus trying to like match the motion blur. But I'm going to definitely try to match the motion blur first. So what I'm going to do is I'll do it in the next video just to show you guys a little bit of that process. But mostly I'll find a frame that has little motion blur, something like this. I'll draw the relative shapes that you can see and then just start to animate it. And hopefully that motion blur will kind of solve most of itself. And then the rest of these areas, we'll probably try to do it through a key. So we have some of these areas. We might have some problem areas where there's like seams because we have this light that has this black panel. But this is something I would probably fix with paint rather than rotoscoping. So that will be later on when we build the key. But I won't ramble on too much. I'll start to go to the next video and do this next process. So step 1, roto the problem areas. Step 2, roto the difficult areas. And then step 3, we'll talk about some other stuff. So moving on.